Do you think it was supernatural?
I was saved that day. I was being watched over. I shouldn't have been okay.
Saved from the brink of death, special guest Rachel Cook joins us today to share her miraculous story on this episode of The Rock of Ages and Modern Day People. Welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Mercy Kala, and I'm joined with Rachel. You have quite a miraculous story to share on how your life was saved. Why don't you walk us through that day and how things played out?
Well, I was driving over to my boyfriend at the time, now husband's new house. He had just bought a house and we were in college. And so I was offering to drive over to help him start unpacking things and not be so lonely. So I headed over there after dinner with my girlfriends on college campus, and it was a rainy night and it was really dark. And I just remember going over a pretty steep curve in the road. And due to the fact that it was raining, my car started to hydroplane. And immediately what went through my mind was, okay, I need to correct my car. So I just kind of jerked the wheel to try to correct it and get back into my lane. And my car started to snake down the road. There was an oncoming car. So I just remember kind of jerking it one more time to try to get back in my lane before I would have a head-on collision. And all I remember is just going off the road and flipping over and over and over. I just was holding onto the wheel and I hear crunching all around me, and luckily my car landed upright, but the fact that it was upright was amazing.
So as this was happening, what was going through your mind?
What's unique about the situation is when I was driving to Cullen's house that night, I had decided to listen to the Christian radio station. And so I just remember as soon as I crashed, obviously I'm shaking and I just hear static. The radio's gone. The glasses that I had on my face weren't on my face anymore. The shoes I had on my feet weren't on my feet anymore. My backpack with my school stuff that I was going to bring over to study out of my car, everything had gone out of my sunroof. I couldn't find my phone to call for help. So just initial panic and, oh my goodness, how am I still okay? I remember I had burrs in my hair and like leaves from the cornfield that I was tumbling in. So just initial panic and shock, and what am I going to do? How am I going to call for help? But luckily that oncoming car had stopped and came over to check on me, and he was a retired fireman. So he knew exactly what to do, how to call for help, how to keep me calm. So I felt really thankful for having him there, because at the time, it's a little bit more of a developed area now, but at the time there wasn't a lot of homes around or anywhere that I could have gone to ask for help. The firefighter called and then they came for help. And they took me on a stretcher just to be precautious.
Coming up,
the doctor there, did his examination and said, it's a miracle. Like, you should not be okay. You should not be here.
what was it like for you when you realized you weren't even remotely hurt but had come out unscathed?
And I went to the hospital that was actually right by where my boyfriend at the time's house had been purchased. So I was able to call him from my phone that they found in the ambulance, totally unscratched, totally fine. My glasses were fine. Everything was fine. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm not at your house yet because I just got into a really bad car accident. So he met me at the hospital, and the doctor there, did his examination and said, it's a miracle. Like, you should not be okay. You should not be here. I had maybe one scratch on my body and a little bit of a sore neck for a day or two, but just totally untouched. Everything around me was crunched except for where I was sitting. Other people have stories like this too that I'm not realizing on a day-to-day basis. And it really just made me realize that we need to be there for one another.
Would you say you felt relieved when you saw help arrive, or when you finally got to speak to a loved one?
Yeah, I felt super relieved, because in that moment you're thinking, wow, that could have been it. And all the things you didn't get to say or all the things you didn't get to do. I was just leaving my girlfriends from the college campus. So I really didn't say like a genuine goodbye or anything. I was just said, see you guys tomorrow. So just all those things that you wish you would have done for a moment like that, it definitely comes to light in a situation like that. And obviously I just felt immense relief that they were able to find all of my things, even though things aren't important. But at the moment, it just felt so significant that I was okay and all my things were okay, and that there was people rallying around me to help me find a car, to help me get, settled back in.
From the pictures you shared on your social media accounts after the fact, it's evident you weren't supposed to come out of that in good health, but you did. Do you think it was supernatural?
Yeah, I do. And I really like to listen to podcasts now that are Christian based. And I'm listening to one right now called The Unfolding, which has some real life God stories like the one I'm sharing with you now. And there was one where someone did get into a really bad car accident, and they were talking about how, it was dark and it was rainy, and then someone came out of nowhere to save them, and they truly thought it was an angel. And I remember thinking in my mind, why didn't that happen to me? Why didn't I have an angel? And then immediately I had a thought pop into my mind that said, Rachel, I literally did that for you. And I just sit there and I was like, wow, you're right. I did have an angel that day. I was saved that day. I was being watched over. I shouldn't have been okay. So I feel really, really lucky. It wasn't just chance. It happened for a reason, and I was protected. And I need to remember that and know that my time here is not done. My purpose isn't done. I'm just getting started.
So when you informed your loved ones about it, what did they make of the situation?
Obviously, those phone calls were really precious. The ones that I made to my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, telling them what happened, telling them I'm okay, them crying, saying, thank God that you're okay. And those were really precious moments too. They basically just said that it was a miracle and that they're so thankful that I'm okay. And I remember my grandma, I think it was Thanksgiving, because this was in October of 2016. So it was right around Thanksgiving time. So when we got back together for Thanksgiving, I remember my grandma writing me a card and including Bible verses of how thankful she is that I'm okay, and just a lot of hugs and just cherishing that time a little bit more than I would have in the past, especially because this time period when I got into my car accident, I was in college. I was prioritizing my social life, obviously school as well. I care about school. I'm a teacher now, but my priorities with God and my relationship with God was little to none. So this really helped to kickstart that process for me again.
Would you say it changed your life?
I would say a couple weeks after, for sure. I was definitely affected by the accident. But as I settled back in to real life and back to college and, going to school and focusing on social life, I feel like it didn't. But there were subtle changes that have now impacted my life, like me starting to listen to the Christian radio station. After that day, I was like, I'm not listening to anything else. I need to feel safe in my car. So I started listening to Christian music to and from school, and then to and from my job after I graduated. And that hasn't stopped. And I feel like it's planted seeds to make me now want to do more, like read my Bible and journal and pray and talk about it with my friends and listen to podcasts that are Christian related and read Christian focused books. So I feel like now my whole world is totally turned around, but I think that was the moment that started it. That took a couple of years for me to get to where I am now. So I feel like I'm in the right place. I'm with my right person, and I'm just trying to share God with more people now that I feel like I have a relationship with him. And in the past, I think it was more so religion and that I believe in him. So now that I have this new outlook, I have this new experience, I want to share it with other people because it's life-changing.
Her story reminds me of Jeremiah 29:11, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And God really did have such plans for her life, because she went from seeing her life flash before her eyes to finding love in an unexpected place. I understand you went on to get married, and that's quite an interesting story itself because you two met on a dating app.
Yeah, we had just met when I got into my car accident. We met in January, started dating in March, and then I got into my car accident in October. So a pretty intense event for a fresh couple off of a dating app. But at the time, I just really wanted to find someone. And so I downloaded Tinder, and my parents frowned upon it. I know it's not a good app to be on, but I wanted to find someone. And the second day after I downloaded the app, I found Cullen. I asked my friends, do you think he's cute? And they're like, yeah, he's cute. You should swipe. I'm like, are you sure? And so I did. And, the rest is history. Obviously, he's my best friend now and we're married. But at the time, I told my mom and dad that we met on the college campus at a friend gathering. But later we confessed that it was on Tinder. But I know its connotations is like really bad things. But for me, it was really pure. And I was able to find my best friend from it. And so, yeah, I feel really lucky for that because otherwise I wouldn't have found him. And I remember on our wedding day when our pastor was praying over us, it was the most beautiful day. It's just really special that we found each other.
So for those watching this that weren't raised with it, but are seeing their loved ones navigate dating in our modern day, what do you have to say having met your spouse in this way?
I would say that if you're using it for the right intentions, then it can be a good thing. So obviously setting boundaries and having respect for yourself. That was the way that we initially met and connected. But from then on, we had several in-person get-togethers and exchanged phone numbers and had phone calls and things like that. So that was the way that we initially met. But then we kind of moved into the more traditional, like going on dates and stuff like that. So we have lots of couples who have met on Tinder or other dating apps now. And I think it's a really good thing because you're kind of exposed to more people than you would experience just in your day-to-day life. So I'm really thankful for it. And I encourage it as long as you're using it for, in my opinion, the right purposes.
Well, you've come through what many would call a miracle, and how you found love is an interesting story of its own. What does God have you doing now?
So right now I am a 6th grade math teacher. I am in my 5th year. I also coach cross country as well as track for the high school. So that kind of keeps me busy. In my free time, I really like to run. I've run marathons. When Cullen and I were still dating, he trained and ran a marathon with me. And I feel like that was really amazing to work together for something so hard. It was through Team World Vision, which was our church. So I feel like we grew together a lot during that time. We also just really like to go out and be in nature. We really like to go to national parks and go hiking.
Well, there you have it. From beginning to end, it's evident that God can use any situation to showcase his miraculous abilities. And he can use any means, just like he did for her and her husband, to bring his plans for you to pass. Coming up, Rachel has some encouragement for you. What would be your message for anyone who's watching today?
I would say just pay attention to the things that you feel are just coincidence or are just luck, because I've learned a new term called God winks, and there's so many that happen on a day-to-day basis for me that kind of just proves to me that God's real and God's always watching and with you. So just open your eyes and try to pay attention to it because he's there, and we just have to stop focusing on ourselves and our day-to-day lives and just realize that there's a bigger picture in the world, and you'll start to notice it. And it's really, really neat when you do.
Before we go, would you share how people can contact you?
I would say social media is probably the best. So Rachel Cook, COOK, and I have Instagram and Facebook, and I'd love to respond on there to anyone who wants to reach out and talk.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to talk about and reflect. And I feel like I'm just in a really thankful mood now and feeling so grateful. And I just can't wait to have a good day.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification bell down below so that you'll always be notified when I post a video. I'll see you next time.